At the time that I'm recording this, we are less than 2 months away from a presidential election in the United States in 2024. And this topic is not political at all, but I think that it would be really applicable for us in what it means to be a Christian here living in 2024, especially if you live in the United States of America. Because what I want to be talking about today is what it means to be a peacemaker. Now, this term peacemaker has been given all sorts of different expectations, but I kind of want to run through what does it actually mean to be a peacemaker? What does that look like? And in my discovery for trying to figure out how do we be a peacemaker, what does conflict look like to people, I did a Reddit deep dive, and that may not have been the best idea, and I'm going to share some of that with you. But before we begin, my name is Mariah. I'm a certified Christian mental health coach, and I'm here to help you grow in emotional and spiritual maturity through biblically based holistic practices. If you want to go deeper in your emotional health journey, I have a free link for you in the description. This is for basically growing in your emotional health, what it means to be a Christian and emotionally healthy at the same time. And if you want to have conversations like this and more, be sure to follow me over on my Instagram page where we have different conversations in my stories. So can't wait to see you over there. All right, so this entire next few weeks, it's not politically motivated at all. But I think that it is applicable for us in this specific time frame and beyond. Because being a peacemaker requires us to understand conflict and requires us to learn what it means to get into a fight and what does that look like. Now, fighting is really nothing new. In fact, I feel like people were born fighting. We're born getting into conflict. We're born getting into these different disagreements. And we seek peace. We seek serenity. We seek that and we try to mimic it. But oftentimes, people substitute peace for some cheap alternative that really isn't lasting peace, but rather it's just making them comfortable. And I want to get into why we think that way. What is a peacemaker? What does a peacemaker do? And what is a peacemaker not? Conflict is in our nature, like I said. It is something that we experience on a constant basis. If you go on social media right now in 2024, it is a dumpster fire. I hate it. It's the worst. I feel like every time I go on there, there is just one person yelling and another person calling names, and it's just this nauseous back and forth of conflict. And honestly, we get into conflict over dumb things, which leads me to my Reddit post, which I learned and was discovering in all my research. I'm thinking like, okay, what are the dumb things that people get into fights about? And I was blanking on inspiration, and I'm so grateful for Reddit. So let me read a couple of these things to you. Quote, she asked me to go get her tacos at a bar, and I asked her to wait with me so she can tell me what she wants with them. She told me that she didn't want to and that to just put everything on them, so I did. Then I got mad at her for putting onions. Oh, then she got mad at me for putting onions. Quote, another one. Two guys were fighting over whether the Purge films or Fast and Furious films were better and escalated really quickly. They weren't even drunk. I mean, honestly, they're two completely different genres. What a random choice of movies to fight over. This one over here. This is the last one. Ridiculous. Two kids got into a fight on my floor in college because one of them accidentally knocked the other kid's cheeseburger out of his hands. Ended up with one of them being walked out in handcuffs. Can you think of a dumb reason why someone, maybe you, have gotten into a fight? And before you're tempted to think that, well, maybe people in the past weren't really as dumb about conflicts. Maybe they had a better way of going about things. No. I'm going to stop that right now. Honestly, even if we look all the way back into the Bible, conflict is all over the pages. I mean, God's people were the ones that were supposed to be leading the world in what it means to be filled with peace. And the person who founded Israel, Jacob and Esau, they got into a fight over a bowl of stew. I'm just saying, we get into fights for all sorts of reasons. And if the people of the Bible couldn't get their crap together, how do we even get our crap together? What does it really mean to be a peacemaker? So let's talk about this concept. The term peacemaker we find in Matthew 5, verse 9, where it says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." This is what I really want to hone in on. What is a peacemaker? What are they? and what are they not. So I've got 3 points, and we're going to break them down in the next couple of videos, really trying to break down what a peacemaker is and what a peacemaker is not. So the first thing is, a peacemaker is committed to reality. Peacemakers are committed to humility. And finally, peacemakers are committed to grace. What are peacemakers not? Peacemakers are not delusional. Peacemakers are not proud. And peacemakers are not focused on themselves. So let's dial this back again now that we have a big picture of where do we even get this concept peacemaker? Like I said, we find it in Matthew chapter 5, where Jesus is giving his most famous message called the Sermon on the Mount. And this is actually a really interesting message because when you look at the context, Jesus is giving this message during a very violently political time frame where people are upset against the Romans because the Romans weren't that great, and they caused all types of division and problems. They were taxed beyond crazy, and Jesus is saying that in order for us to follow God, to be like God, we need to put these principles into place. We need to know what it means to have his kingdom come on earth, and that requires us being a peacemaker. Now, blessed are the peacemakers is the 7th beatitude in this message. So there's already 6 ahead of them where Jesus is, blessed is this person, blessed is this person. And then finally in the 7th one, blessed are the peacemakers. And I just think that there's some real application for us to dissect and go through when it comes to following Jesus and when it comes to seeking peace. Oftentimes we settle for a false sense of peace because we think that peace means being comfortable. That if there is no noise, then there's peace. We associate silence with peace. And if someone's frustrated or having a conflict, then somehow that's not peace. And I just want to bust that myth, honestly, because you can be silent and still be manipulative. If you are a passive aggressive person, just because things are quiet or things are like under the surface, like that song, doesn't mean that there aren't things going on. And it doesn't mean that peace is just like a Viking, like coming through, like kicking down doors, busting people out, like throwing them out into the streets. I feel like there's like 2 different drastic versions of what people think creating peace looks like, and it's none of it. So what is peace? And how do I become a peacemaker? Well, peace is really learning how to overcome evil with good. We see this in Romans 12, verse 21, where peace is not passive. It doesn't just let things happen, but peace is very active. We are called to be peacemakers when we wage war against the way of the world. When we decide to not let the way of the world system dictate how we're going to live our lives and how we're going to follow Jesus. Peacemakers, we are given the ministry of reconciliation. This is found in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 18. What that means, because this again has been misunderstood, but what that really means is that we're not called to sit on the sidelines. We are called to actively participate in the life around us. And we're called to bring reconciliation, bring peace into situations that there would be no peace. Now, I think some people mistake 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 11, where it says that we're supposed to have a quiet and peaceable life, for a passive life. That you just do you over there, and I'm just going to do me over here, and we're going to be fine as long as we don't bother each other. But that's not what real peace is, because that's just coexisting. That's not necessarily creating peace. As I've touched on before, when it comes to human reality, is conflict is inevitable. Conflict is a part of life, and some of us are so adverse to conflict that we actually create conflict by not dealing with the conflict. You know what I'm talking about. But living a peaceful life, that is counterculture. Living a peaceful life requires you and I to change our thinking. Now, I'm going to touch on that in a couple of weeks, but we aren't just these people that break up fights. We aren't just mediators, although mediation is a part of peacemaking, but rather we're learning how to deal with conflict in a way that honors the other person and honors God and honors ourselves. Not all conflict is bad. In fact, if there is no conflict, I would be concerned, because then people aren't actually being honest. Again, I'll get into this in the coming weeks. But conflict, when it's done right, brings a closeness to it. However, you need to have the heart of a peacemaker. And why do we be a peacemaker though? Because I'll get into the coming weeks that being a peacemaker is not an easy thing. It is actually really difficult, and a lot of times you're going to be misunderstood for what you're doing. People are going to think that you're being manipulative, or think that you're being controlling, or all types of things. Like, you're going to get slandered. Like, it is not fun feeling like you're constantly getting punched in the face because you're trying to do the right thing, even though it doesn't always look like that. So what is our motivation for peace? Because it can't be found in human approval. Humans flip-flop all the time. Our motivation for peace has to be found in the approval of God, because peace is not content with making you comfortable. Peace is content with making you whole. And if our approval is that God calls us his children, that is what's going to lead to healing. That's what's going to lead to life. And the only way that you would actually care to be a peacemaker is if you have been impacted by the love of God so radically that it changes everything. If your life has not been radically impacted by the love of God, it makes sense to just kind of like, I'm good. Like, you do you, I do me, we're fine. Like, peace out, even though it's not really. But when you are exposed to the love of God, when you have experienced the fullness of who he is, you can't help but want to bring peace to the life of those around you. It's a come and see and go and take. Because Jesus also talks about how the kingdom of heaven, that's, what the church is supposed to be, a reflection of the kingdom of heaven. It says the kingdom of heaven, the gates of hell will not prevail against it. The gates of hell, that's an offensive term. The church is meant to be offensive. We're supposed to go out into the world to radicalize the world with the love of God, to understand that his ways are superior, that he is superior. We should not be intimidated or limited and feel like peace means that we just have to go along to get along. That's not what that means. So as we go into the coming weeks, I want to really touch on the different aspects, like I said before, but tell me what you think. What questions do you have regarding peace? What is it that maybe you have experienced? You're like, I don't know if this is actually peace or not, or I thought this was peace and that was definitely not. So let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single episode, and I'll catch you in the next one.